Well, good morning and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the April webinar, which is designed with Title I Part A coordinators in mind. My name is Amber Skaggs, and I work in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support here at KDE. And joining me today is my colleague, Erin.
I'm Erin Suddeth, and I also work in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support.
So prior to sharing today's content, let's review the logistical information. To submit a question during the call, send an email to erin.suddeth@education.ky.gov. The webinar will be recorded and posted on the Title I Documents and Resources webpage. Responses to any follow-up questions will be emailed after the webinar, and this pertains to any district-specific inquiry or any questions that we don't get to during the live webinar. So for today's webinar, we will review the following agenda items. Let's rewind. If you recall, the snow in March interfered with the webinar, so our rewind today will take us back to February. We'll look at the year at a glance for April, some GMAP application information, evaluating the Title I program, planning ahead and those parent surveys, and then of course the resources that were consulted. As a reminder, we did release the presentation to you in its entirety prior to today's session, and we encourage you to take notes during the webinar. So prior to moving forward with today's topics, let's rewind and review what was covered during the last presentation. February's call featured the following topics: the year at a glance, private schools consultation agreement, parent and family engagement, and these are archived online and available for viewing as your schedule allows if you missed the live presentations. Let's now focus on the year at a glance, reminders for the month of April. During this time, you should be collecting assigned time and effort records for staff who work on multiple cost objectives. More information regarding time and effort was shared during December's Title I webinar. Submit requests to amend grants as needed. Use available data to determine schools eligible for Title I services for next school year. Meet with school principals to collect information on the use of funds to support Title I programs for the next funding application. As a reminder, until we receive allocation information for fiscal year 19, you should use your hold harmless amount when planning. Also, during this time, consult with eligible private schools and obtain affirmation of consultation with participating private school officials. Complete the Equitable Services Consultation Packet for all participating private schools and submit that to the KDE Ombudsman. Without further ado, Erin will share GMAP application information.
Thanks, Amber. So revisions to the GMAP applications were due January 31st, and that is for both 2016 and 2017 applications. Consultants are currently in the process of reviewing and approving all of those amended applications. So whenever an application is revised, an allocation is revised, that application needs to be updated. So make sure that you're revising and resubmitting those applications for both fiscal year 17 and fiscal year 18. Now we're going to look at some of the common issues that our consultants have encountered recently, and these issues will result in your application being returned. What we've done is broken this up by each GMAP page. First, we will go through these slides explaining the issues and how to address them, and then when necessary, we're going to look at a screenshot of that page in GMAP just for a little clarification. So we're going to go through the application in order, discussing only pages where consultants have observed some common issues. All right, we're going to start with the school eligibility page. First, we're going to look at the service selection. And all A1 schools fall into one of the following categories. We have targeted assistance eligible, no program. This means that the school's poverty percentage is above the selected qualification measure, for example, the 35% rule, but below the 40% low income level, which means the school is eligible for a targeted assistance program. However, in this selection, the district opts not to serve the school. Your next option is targeted assistance program. Again, the school's poverty percentage is above the selected qualification measure, but below 40% low income. The district decides to implement a targeted assistance program at the school. In a targeted assistance program, only identified students receive Title I services. The next selection is school-wide eligible, no program. This school's poverty percentage is at or above 40% low income, making them eligible to run a school-wide program. However, the district opts not to serve the school. Next is school-wide eligible targeted assistance program. The school's poverty percentage is at or above 40% low income, and although the school is eligible for a school-wide program, the district opts to implement a targeted assistance program and serve only identified students. Your next option is school-wide program. This means the poverty percentage is at or above 40% low income, and the district is implementing a school-wide program. All students are eligible to be served. Another option is not a Title I school. Now, this refers to schools not eligible for a Title I program based on the selected qualification measure. These schools are not eligible for and not receiving Title I services. Now, non-A1 schools such as alternative schools and preschools also fall into this category. I just want to make a note that this portion of the slide was corrected and we resent the presentation to you on Tuesday. So just for your own reference, make sure that you're using the correct presentation. The final service option that's not shown on screen is alternate funding. Now, this is reserved for schools being served with alternate funds, such as a specific grant they've applied for, maybe a donation, something that other schools are not receiving. Now, remember, the service selection that you make on this page needs to match the Title I status selection in Infinite Campus. And this is just to ensure that all of our end-of-year data is accurate. All right, moving on. The second component of the school eligibility page is the poverty factor selection. Now, this should be the same for each school unless you are a district with CEP schools. In that case, you may be using multiple factors. The poverty factor listed on this page must match the selection on the school program details page, and we'll review that again when we take a look at that page. So here's a screenshot of that school eligibility page, and what you're going to see on the left drop-down menu is the service selection. Now, the one more to the right, that's for poverty factors, and we're going to review those right now. So the first one is free and reduced lunch. This refers to participation in USDA's National School Lunch Program, and this is a really common poverty factor used by districts to determine eligibility for Title I services. Your next option is direct certification. Directly certified children refers to students directly certified through SNAP, TANF, Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, or Medicaid. Direct certified children also refers to children experiencing homelessness, Head Start children, migrant youth, and runaways. These children qualify for services without any other documentation. Next, we have the direct certification plus household survey. This option refers to the use of direct certification and some sort of household income application. Then we have the direct certification and 1.6 multiplier. The 1.6 multiplier is used to account for the difference in poverty rates when you're using free and reduced price meal data at a non-CEP school and direct certification data at a CEP school. Using only direct certification usually results in a lower poverty percentage for those CEP schools. The multiplier is intended to approximate the free and reduced price meal count for a CEP school. This option takes the number of direct certified students and multiplies it by 1.6. And for more information on direct certification serving CEP schools, you can refer to the U.S. Department of Education's Community Eligibility Provision Non-Regulatory Guidance. The last option that you'll see for poverty factors is Other, and this is used for alternative, preschool, or non-A1 schools. Our next page is the district set-aside page, and we have several things we want to look at on this page. First is homeless children and youth. Adequate funds must be reserved for students experiencing homelessness at all schools. And we've been talking about this update a lot recently. I know it's caused me to return some applications. So if you'll recall, in the December webinar, Natasha and I explained this new requirement found in ESSA section 1113C. It states that districts must reserve such funds as may be necessary to serve homeless children attending both Title I and non-Title I schools. If the district has not identified any homeless students, funds must still be reserved in the event that students are identified as homeless throughout the school year. Now, there's not currently a formula for determining the appropriate amount for a homeless set-aside, but we did discuss some common methods in the December webinar as well as the August newsletter. Now, when I review an application, I check to see if the amount reserved is adequate, and that's regardless of any funds or services being provided through something like a McKinney-Vento grant, Frisky, community donations, etc. I also look at the narrative for details on the services that will be provided, as well as the methodology in determining that amount to be reserved. There's several set-aside categories that require narratives before an application can be approved, so we're going to talk about those right now. First is parent and family engagement. This is a required component of the Title I Part A grant. Although only districts with allocations greater than $500,000 are required to reserve funds, all districts and schools receiving services must have a parent and family engagement program in place. A brief description of the program should be provided in this narrative. Your next set-aside that requires a narrative is the set-aside for English learners. The district must provide a narrative documenting the effective means of outreach to the parents of English learners as required by ESSA Section 1112E. Now, this requirement moved from Title III to Title I this year and can be paid for using Title I or Title III funds. If the district doesn't have any EL students, they need to explain how the requirements will be met and funded should any EL students move to the district. Next is substitute salaries. The district needs to state how substitutes for Title I funded teachers taking sick or personal days will be funded. If you're using general funds for this, you can just put a simple sentence stating that, and that's a sufficient narrative. Remember, substitutes for Title I funded teachers completing professional development activities should be allocated in the professional development set-aside. The last note on the district set-aside page is that this page is for district expenses only. You don't need to mention private schools anywhere on this page. This page is only dealing with the public school portion of the money. And I didn't include a screenshot of this page because it's pretty straightforward. The next page we're going to talk about is the PPA page. This page features the total amount that's available to be allocated to the schools. And the way we get the total on this is we take the public share of the allocation and subtract the district set-asides. Now, the PPA at each school should be adequate to run a Title I program. In our December newsletter, we included an article on the importance of providing adequate per-pupil amounts to each school. The U.S. Department of Education does not specify minimum or maximum amounts for PPAs. However, they do provide some tips in the non-regulatory guidance on the allocation of Title I funds. Our next note is that schools must be served in rank order, meaning schools with the highest low-income percentage should receive the largest PPA. Now, another option is for the district to serve all schools with the same PPA, and that is perfectly allowable. The really important thing is just to make sure that a school with a low poverty percentage is not receiving a higher PPA than a school with a very high poverty percentage. Another note about the PPA page is that the remaining balance needs to be as close to zero as possible, but not be negative. You might have a few cents there, and that's okay. All right, taking a look at our screenshot of the PPA page. So you can see there's an average PPA calculated by GMAP, and it's found near the top of the page. If your district is serving any schools with less than 35% low income, this is going to be the minimum PPA that can be assigned to any school. Now, districts not serving schools below 35% low income, you can use this PPA, you can go above, below, it doesn't matter. You can see that GMAP has indicated whether the amount calculated is either the average PPA or the minimum PPA, and that's there in parentheses. You can see on this screenshot, this is the average PPA. GMAP also arranges the schools receiving services in rank order. If you take a look at column B, you can see that the percentages are listed from high to low. When I review the PPA page, I always make sure that the PPAs are also in a descending order to ensure that schools are being served based on rank. If they aren't, I check to see if that district is using grade span ranking. That would really be the only reason for those PPAs not to be displayed in a descending order. For example, in this screenshot, you can see that the amounts appear to be out of order. So if I were reviewing this application, this would be a red flag to me, and I would check to see if grade span ranking was being used before marking the page as okay. This takes us to the school personnel and program description page. First, let's talk about the personnel documentation. All staff being paid for at the school level need to be documented on this page, and we document their head count as well as FTE. Head count represents the number of people. This always needs to be a whole number because you can't have half of a person. FTE stands for full-time equivalency, and this represents the percentage of their salary being paid for by Title I. This doesn't have to be a whole number, but it does need to be less than or equal to the head count. Remember that people listed on this page must be completing the appropriate time and effort documentation, whether that is a semi-annual certification for someone who's fully funded by Title I, or a personnel activity report, or PAR, for someone who's partially funded by Title I. Okay. The other component of this page is the program description. The program description functions like a mini needs assessment. It's a straightforward explanation of the school's needs and how Title I funds will be used to address the needs. The program description should include identified areas of improvement, how the needs were identified, and what the school will do to address those identified needs. Remember, this is not a place to just list all the things that you want to purchase with Title I funds. So if we look at a screenshot of the page, you'll see that each school receiving services has a row that looks like this. The school will typically be listed on the left, and then there's columns to list the head count and the FTE of all the Title I funded personnel working at the school. If you don't have any Title I funded personnel working at that school, you just leave those boxes blank. However, every school receiving services must fill in that program description box on the right. Moving on to our Personnel Details District-Wide page. Any personnel that's paid for at the district level needs to be documented on this page. Any personnel that's mentioned on the district set-aside page, they should be listed here as well. Personnel paid at the district level must serve multiple Title I schools. Do not redocument any of your school level personnel on this page. That's an easy mistake to make. So if I see any personnel listed on this page, what I do is I like to go back and look at the district set-aside page just to make sure that they're documented in one of the narratives. And I also like to see how much the set-aside is. Is it enough to cover their salary and their fringe benefits? If any teachers, coaches, things like that are listed on this page, I check the narratives on the district set-aside page just to verify that those people are in fact working at multiple schools. So here's our screenshot of that page. I have reviewed applications where coordinators have mistakenly included school level personnel on this page. So they might have, say, 10 teachers listed here. And like I said previously, that's a really easy mistake to make, but it's effectively counting those employees twice. And we don't want to do that. Typically, the total headcount on this page is relatively small for most districts. For example, you can see in the screenshot that this district is only paying for 3 people at the district level. Now, when determining where to list your personnel, the school page or the district page, a really good rule of thumb is just to ask yourself, where does this person work? If the person works at the district office or multiple schools, then they should be paid from the district level allocation and documented on this page. If they work at an individual school, they need to be paid from that school's allocation and documented on our previous page. And just like with the previous page, all of our Title I funded personnel listed here should be completing those appropriate time and effort logs. Okay, our next page to review is the school program details page. This page has several areas that we need to look at. Up first is poverty and low income determination. What you do here is the district selects a method of determination such as free and reduced lunch or direct certification. Now remember, as I said before, this should match the selection that you made on your school eligibility page. You also indicate the date that that data was pulled. The date used needs to be a date from the previous school year that students were in attendance, so make sure it's not a holiday or summer break or something like that. Now, if the district does use multiple methods of determination, if you have CEP and non-CEP schools, then you need to make sure that the date is the same for each method so that we're ensuring an equitable representation. On the screenshot of the school program details page, you can see where the district has selected their poverty determination method and provided a date from last school year. Now, this next question is new this year and has caused some confusion when completing the application. The question asks, will the district prioritize high schools with 50% or more poverty level? ESSA Section 1113A gives the district the option to lower the poverty threshold to 50% for high schools. This new provision was covered in depth in our May newsletter and our September webinar. Those are both located on the Title I Part A Documents and Resources webpage if you want to take a look. Now, if you select yes on this question, you must serve all high schools with at least 50% poverty above all elementary and middle schools with less than 75% poverty. We're effectively treating those high schools as though they have 75% poverty. The next section of the school program details page where we run into some errors is method of allocation of funds. You have three options here. The first one is district-wide rank. This is probably the most common method of allocating funds and serves schools from high to low poverty. District-wide rank means that schools are served in rank order regardless of anything like grade range. Your next option is grade span rank. In this option, schools are grouped depending upon their grade range, typically K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And then an average poverty percentage is taken to place the grade span groups in rank order. Within each grade span, schools must still be served in rank order. Your third option is the exception. This is for districts with either an enrollment of under 1,000 students or districts with only one school per grade span. Remember, regardless of how you choose to allocate your funds, you need to serve all schools at or above 75% low income in rank order. The last area to discuss on this page is the method of qualification of attendance areas. The selection made here determined which schools are eligible for service, and there's three possible selections. You have the 35% rule, probably the most common selection. In this, any A1 school with at least 35% poverty is eligible to receive service. Next is your district-wide poverty average. This requires you take a look back at the school eligibility page. On that page, at the bottom of the low income percent column, you'll find the average low income percentage for the entire district. Only schools at or above that percentage are eligible for service. The final option is district-wide grade span poverty averages. When you use this option, you need to use the enrollment and low-income data from that school eligibility page to calculate average low-income percentages for each grade span. Those averages need to be entered on the chart at the bottom of the page, which you'll see in a minute, and only schools at or above the grade span poverty average are eligible to receive service. So here's a screenshot of that page. And as you can see, this district has selected grade span rank and district-wide grade span poverty averages. They've also completed that chart I just mentioned at the bottom to include the poverty averages. If I were reviewing this application, I would jot down those percentages, go back to the school eligibility page and just verify that 1, those percentages are accurate, and 2, that the schools selected for service are at or above the average percent listed on the chart. Okay, we're almost through the GMAP application. Next, we're going to look at services to private schools. ESSA Section 1115C states that students must be selected using multiple educationally related objective criteria. So just listing the method of low-income determination in this section is not sufficient. Low-income status determines the students who will generate funds for the private school. However, just because a student generates funds does not mean that they require services. The students receiving services need to be determined by this educationally related objective criteria. Now, non-regulatory guidance lists some acceptable criteria as achievement tests, teacher referrals and recommendations, or grades. This is not an exhaustive list, but it does cover the main methods of selection criteria. So here we have a screenshot of the private school page, and the box on the left is where I would expect to see that educational criteria listed. For example, students are selected for service based on MAP testing and grades. The box on the right functions similarly to the program description box that we mentioned before talking about the school personnel and program description page. When I'm reviewing an application, I expect to see a brief description of what the identified needs are and what services are being provided to address those needs. Again, not a list of items to be purchased with Title I funds. Now, my final GMAP reminders are about the budget page. I didn't put any screenshots to go with this page. So your first reminder, the total amounts on the budget page need to match the Title I allocation summary page. Unfortunately, these pages don't talk to each other, so it's going to be up to you to determine that the amounts are accurate. Now, in our Title I summer training last year, we recommended starting with either the parent and family engagement budget, maybe the private school budget, allocating those first, and then that remaining amount is what you have to spend on district and school activities. The final reminder about the GMAP budget page is that each budget requires an adequate narrative. This is new this year. Now, for some budget items, like anything related to personnel, it might be really brief, such as fringe benefits for 5 teachers. However, in some other categories like general supplies, supplemental books, things of that nature, we're going to want to see a little bit more detail. Not a list of everything that you plan on purchasing, just a brief explanation of what you're going to do, maybe a couple examples, things like that. The thing we don't want to see is classroom supplies. Very, very basic, not a lot of detail there. And that's about all that we have for our GMAP reminders, so I'm going to turn things back over to Amber for some information on program evaluations.
Well, thank you, Erin. An approved application that satisfies ESSA requirements is one piece of the Title I puzzle. The hard work is ensuring that the Title I programs in your districts are getting the results you desire, which leads us to our next topic, evaluating Title I program effectiveness and how the monitoring checklist can assist in this endeavor. Now, since January, we have been reviewing various components of the consolidated monitoring checklists, which we here at KDE use if and when your district is selected for monitoring. And as we have shared, these forms are available online, and we encourage you to self-assess your own programs to determine compliance. Our focus today with regard to the checklist is program design and effectiveness. So when you continually monitor the Title I-A schools in your district, you're ensuring that those schools meet program requirements and are using Title I funding to implement programs and services. There are several best practices which can help the district to design and even monitor Title I programs for effectiveness. Best practice number 1. Collaborate and coordinate with other district shareholders to ensure that Title I services are based on each school's needs. So how often does the coordinator meet with other district level staff, for example, the DPP or district assessment coordinator, finance officer, and so on? Are these meetings documented with minutes or other supporting documentation? Does the coordinator review each school's Title I annual review, their needs assessment, CSIP, and other improvement plans to ensure alignment with services? Best practice number 2, monitor the activities and strategies in the school-wide or targeted assistance program. Do classroom observations and walkthrough notes suggest the programs are being implemented with fidelity and target the most at-risk students? Are various forms of data reviewed to ensure the Title I programs are working? Best practice number 3, collaborate and coordinate with other school-level staff and shareholders. How often does the coordinator work in consultation with school councils, principals, teachers, and other school personnel to analyze data and review school-wide programs or targeted assistance plans? Are these meetings documented with minutes or other supporting documentation? Do school personnel understand that the needs assessment drives the design of the Title I program? Do schools annually review the implementation of and the results achieved by the Title I program? And are these findings used to revise the Title I program? So while completing the application and getting approval can feel like an accomplishment itself, the true measure of success within your Title I programs is getting the intended results by improving the achievement of your most at-risk students. By adhering to the 3 best practices, collaborating and coordinating with district-level staff, monitoring the effectiveness of the Title I programs, and working closely with school-level staff, you will have made strides in the right direction to ensure your Title I programs are working effectively. So for a full list of questions associated with the program effectiveness, please consult the following sections of the monitoring checklists. The district level checklist, the district level program design and effectiveness, can be found in section 7 on page 21. Within the school checklist, the school program design and effectiveness can be found in section 2 on page 4. And as a reminder, both checklists, district and school levels, can be found on the Title I Part A Documents and Resources website. So likewise, the Mark of a Sound Title I program must also involve parents and families. So let's look at some information regarding the evaluation of parent and family engagement.
All right, thanks, Amber. So we're going to talk about annually evaluating your parent and family engagement program. The content and effectiveness of a district's parent and family engagement policy and activities must be reviewed every year. We're reviewing these to determine if the academic quality of the district has improved, as well as if parent participation has increased. So first, we're going to talk about what the evaluation identifies. The evaluation must identify any barriers that exist which hinder greater participation by parents, with particular attention to parents who are economically disadvantaged, disabled, have limited English proficiency, limited literacy, or are of any racial or ethnic minority background. We also need to look at the needs of parents and family members to assist with the learning of their children. This could include engaging with school personnel and teachers. Finally, we need to look at strategies to support successful school and family interactions. So the next question is, what should you do with these evaluation findings? Well, they need to be summarized and documented. We use these evaluation findings to design evidence-based strategies for more effective parent and family engagement. We also use them to revise, if necessary, the parent and family engagement policies. Remember, doing that jointly with the parents and family members. How the findings will be used to improve parent and family engagement must also be documented. The final question related to evaluating your parent and family engagement program is, how can parents evaluate the program? A parent survey is a really common method of program evaluation. Now, this could be written, on the phone, online, even in person. We suggest that you look at Appendix L and Appendix M of our Title I handbook for some sample parent and family engagement evaluation forms. And that's all we have on evaluating your parent and family engagement program. Amber, what else do we have to discuss?
Well, we did consult several resources during the creation of this presentation, and those resources are listed in the PowerPoint for you. We do encourage you to consult those materials as well. This is our last monthly webinar until the fall. More information will be provided in future Title I newsletters and via email. All previous webinars are available on the Title I Part A Documents and Resources webpage, and you can email feedback and any suggestions for future calls to title1reports@education.ky.gov. Erin, did we receive any questions?
Yes, we have 3 questions. So our first one is, are districts required to use the private school consultation packet that was released last month?
That's a good question. Yes, the packet must be used during consultation meetings to guide the conversation between the LEA and the non-public school. Each district must also submit that packet to the KDE Ombudsman.
Okay. Our next question. So our district is fortunate enough to receive funds and assistance from our community to help with our homeless students. So we didn't reserve any Title I funds in this category. Are we required to do so? Okay, very good question, and the answer is yes. Districts must reserve funds in this set-aside category. Now, what we encourage you to do is inventory what's been donated and then leverage your Title I funds to cover any educationally related expenses, including academics, extracurriculars, things of that nature. Now, we do have a resource available on our webpage. It's called Serving Students Experiencing Homelessness under Title I Part A. This was created by the National Center for Homeless Education as part of their McKinney-Vento Law into Practice brief series back in November. This document can be used as a reference when determining how to spend your homeless set-aside. And our final question, sorry, I'm going to have to lean, it's very small font. Does this mean, referring to slide 10 talking about substitute pay, does this mean teacher salaries being paid out of Title I, the sub-pay should come only from the Title I program when the teacher is out for PD purposes, and that general fund should pay for sick, personal, and emergency days? Okay, good question. And the answer is no. It's really up to you whether you want the district or general funds to pay for Title I subs. It just depends on what you have to do. So the important thing is that if you are using Title I funds, you need to make sure that if it's for professional development days, that that's in the professional development set aside. Sick or personal days, that needs to be in that substitute salaries. If you are using your district funds, general funds, just put a simple sentence in that narrative saying district funds will be used to cover Title I substitutes or something of that nature. And that is all the questions that we have for today.
Okay, well, thank you, Erin. Well, should you need to contact us, our information is listed in the PowerPoint, but you can reach me at amber.skaggs@education.ky.gov, or you can reach Erin at erin.suddeth@education.ky.gov. And again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.